Hello and welcome to the channel. If you're a returning member, I appreciate you trusting me with my reviews here. Today we're going to go over Garruk Apex Predator. He's been out for a while, but life gets in the way, and I was just in a creator slump a bit. But yeah, here I am trying to get my mojo back as far as that goes. So this is a fun planeswalker, and I thought that I would go ahead and give him a good review. Let's talk about what he brings to the table. So he's at 135 hit points, which is definitely on the high end, though they have been giving us more planeswalkers lately that have a good amount of hit points on them. So I always like that. He's got the mana bonuses of +5 on black and green, which is excellent. Even though he's got a -2 on blue, that's not going to be that big of a deal. We get flat mana gains on white and red. So pretty much any planeswalker that has +5 on green, I'm going to give a special mention to, because green tends to be the easiest color to convert to. So getting that amount of mana on a green match is always great, because you can usually flood the board with green gems and you're just going to be able to cast everything in your hand if everything goes your way, right? +5 on black is also very good. If you want to lean into, say, corrupt gems, for example, you can create a lot of black gems in that way. So definitely relevant when it comes to what you're planning on converting to. We can also talk about deck limits here. 8 creatures is more than you need. 6 spells, 5 supports. Would have been nice to have instead, 5 creatures, 8 spells, 6 supports. That's my preferred way of going about it. The only time 8 creatures is good for me is if I'm mastering cards and I can get through the creatures to master quicker when I can put 8 of them in a deck. But other than that, there's no real reason to have 8 creatures in your deck. No serious player would put that many creatures into their deck. So that's something that I wish they wouldn't do as much of. But they really haven't lately. They've been pretty good with giving us spells and supports. Let's talk about the abilities now. And they're pretty straightforward, I gotta say. There's not a lot of nuance to them, though they are good. Wild Call, ability 1, 10 loyalty. It's kind of a lot, but if you're leaning into gem conversion, it shouldn't be that difficult to get to. You can put in like Hall of Gemstone or something as well to get more loyalty. There's a couple other cards that are really good at generating loyalty for you. In black, Ripples of Undeath, PM2 card, gains you loyalty if there's a certain amount of cards in your opponent's graveyard. There's ways to make 10 loyalty a little less oppressive, but the ability itself is good. Fetch the first 2 creatures from your library. Those cards gain 8 mana. Pretty straightforward there. I do gotta say, though, that at the time of this recording, sometimes it will not fetch the creatures from your library and it just won't do anything when you try to activate this ability. I believe that has something to do with how the library works in this game, where if there's nothing that will refresh your library to give you a brand new 40 cards to pull from, then if you take enough creatures out of your library, then this will just not function correctly. So hopefully they fix that soon, because this is the most useful ability he has, in my opinion. So for it to not work sometimes can be a real speed bump when you're trying to do something such as getting back some creatures that you lost due to removal, or you just want to get more creatures to hit objectives, that sort of thing. Bestial Ambush, ability 2, 17 loyalty. Reinforce each creature you control 2 times, then your creatures gain trample, berserker, and prevent damage until end of turn. So I mostly use this ability to finish games quicker, because I've been mostly building decks for him with large creatures. So reinforcing each creature you control 2 times is going to put a massive amount of power on the board for you. And then your creatures gaining trample, berserker, and prevent damage until end of turn means that you can usually use your creatures to overpower theirs if you don't want to use straightforward removal in that regard. So this one is definitely creature dependent, and the stronger the creatures you use, the more benefit you'll get out of it. It's definitely a useful ability, but it's not going to be useful every turn, and it's not necessarily going to give you any sort of advantage. It's a pretty good finisher, though. Okay, now his third ability, Ultimate Trail. 19 loyalty, create 2 Hunt's Essence tokens, then destroy 3 random opposing cards. This effect can affect vanguards. So this is a really good ability. I would say mostly because of the destroying 3 random opposing cards. Most of the time, this will take out exactly what you need it to. We can get creatures off the board if they're playing nasty supports, such as Demolition Field or Desert. That will really help too. And then, yeah, even if they're playing Vanguards, it's good to be able to get them out of the way as well. It's a pretty useful ability. As long as you have the loyalty to pay for it, it can be very useful in certain situations. And let's talk about what Hunt's Essence tokens do. So the one that I see mostly triggered when I am playing this Planeswalker is the +2/+2 on creatures. So it's not as good as, say, Garruk Cursed Huntsman's third ability when it comes to buffing your creature, but it's okay. It does kind of add up, but it's not really the reason you're playing this ability. Benefit you get when a non-token creature dies is pretty nice. Most of the time, I don't remember that's happening until it does. So it's just kind of a nice little surprise benefit to using this ability. And it's very rare that I've actually destroyed a Vanguard while playing Garruk. So it's a part of the ability that I kind of forget about until it happens. But it's pretty nice to gain 12 loyalty, because then you can just go ahead and use his first ability again, or get pretty close to using his second if you want, or even his third, because another 7 loyalty and you get to destroy another 3 cards of your opponent. So pretty solid ability overall. I like it. And let's talk about the pros and cons of this Planeswalker. So the pros for me, this might be a little subjective, but I really like Golgari color combos. That's black and green if you don't know. One of my favorite color combos to play in this game. I think that since green doesn't have a lot of just built-in removal, black can cover that for you. And then black doesn't have a lot of mana generation most of the time. So green will cover that deficiency there. So I think they're just a color combo that really work together to hide each other's deficiencies. And then the great mana gains in green and black. Big fan of getting 8 mana every time I match a green swap in green or black. Really good life totals. And yeah, I think he really shines in beatdown play styles. Get your big creatures, build them up, make them destroy your opponent's creatures and your opponent as you go. So I think he's really good for that. But let's talk about the cons. He's definitely got less nuance than other Golgari Planeswalkers. I think what he really excels at is just winning quickly, doing it in a pretty convincing manner, having black cards to use to make it more difficult for your opponent to catch up to you. He's definitely got more of a creature limit than you need for the most part. We talked about that earlier. And I'd rather just have more spell or support limits. And his loyalty abilities are somewhat expensive, even though his third helps you to gain back some loyalty. But for the most part, you don't have to worry about that too much. If you're doing a lot of green conversion, you shouldn't have that hard of a time of gaining a lot of loyalty as you go. So there you have it. And let's get into the decks that I've built for him. Okay, so for my decks that I'm going to share with you, I've been playing with him long enough that I have decks saved for him for specific events. So I'm just going to go through them and tell you how they work. No holding back, because these are decks that I actually use in events. So no reason to throttle myself for the sake of demonstration. So this is for the Revolving Planeswalk Green node for the week of the Dominaria United objectives. So you need to play 2 creatures with trample and 2 creatures with reach. So I just use Railway Brawler to hit that objective right away. But we also got Rakdos and 6 to help us do that as well. Railway Brawler is kind of the muscle of this deck. It's the creature that tends to grow the most and therefore usually deals the lethal blow. I never use the plot on this card. I don't know if I've ever actually cast this card with the plotted emblem. So the +6/+6 is whatever. Doesn't even matter. When a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, this creature gets +X/+X. X is that creature's power. So that's really where the strength of this creature lies, especially if you've grown it through other means and then you cast another Railway Brawler. It just stacks up the power and toughness so quickly. Rakdos, if you play this game long enough, you've definitely seen this card in play. Not much really I need to say about him other than have a way to deal with him in every deck that you play. Otherwise, you are likely to lose that battle. That's how meta defining he is right now. So try and keep some sort of either global board wipe or some cheap removal when possible. Demolition Field, just one of the best cards in Standard right now. There's hardly any decks that I don't use this card in because it takes care of support destruction all on its own. And not only that, it gives you a good amount of mana when you hit the activated gems, and there are a lot of them on the field at a time. So pretty amazing card. Hall of Gemstone, this is just a good one to gain an extra swap with, and instead of getting 8 mana, a green or black match, let's get 15 and make things really interesting on our opponent. And then it's got a little bit of removal built into it as well with the Trap 8, deal 10 damage to a random opposing creature. The thing about the trap is most of the time I'm ending up destroying my own trap gems, so it's never as reliable as you want it to be, and it always seems to hit you when Greg is using it, but still, it's a really good card for that extra swap gain. Omen Path Journey. I've talked about this card before, and it's mostly in here. Well, it's got 2 different reasons to be in here now. For one, it's a good way to create some cascades and gem conversion, because when this support enters the board, convert 7 gems to the most present color on the board. So triggering Omen Path Journey, when this support loses shield, return the first land card from your exile into play under your control. Then reinforce that card. At the beginning of your turn, the support loses 1 shield. So at the beginning of your turn, you're always going to be pulling a land from your exile. So we get either Sunken Citadel, Demolition Field, or this new creature, 6. It is a land creature. I think it might be the only one that's a land in Standard that is a creature. When a land support enters the board under your control, seed 2 gems. So that's a good way of creating seed gems. Then destroy the top 3 cards of your library. Self-mill. When you trigger Ley Line, if you don't remember, it's when you match 3 or more gems for the first time during your turn. This creature gets +X/+X until end of turn. X is the amount of green gems on the board. So when you do that, you will return the first non-land creature from your graveyard to play under your control, then reinforce it X times. X is the amount of seed gems on the board. So there's a lot of times that you can get a lot of seed gems on the board. If you get this card and want to go that route, You can add more seed cards into your decks, but not totally necessary. It's kind of just a good card to bring in creatures from your graveyard into play. So if they get destroyed, or you play Gather the Pack, you're destroying the next 4 creatures in your library. So that's a great way to get 6 going. And then Template Discovery, just an amazing gem conversion spell. It is appropriately costed at 25 mana because it usually takes a long time to get going, but when it does, you're likely to be able to fill most of your hand with mana. And then it's got the added benefit of Discovery 4. And then finally, Threats Undetected. Pick 2 of the first 4 different cards from your library. Put those cards on the bottom of your library and fetch the other cards. Those cards gain 6 mana. So this card has always been bugged in the way that you can bring up to 3 creatures into play. You don't even have to pick 2 of the 4 different creature cards from your library. You can pick 1, and the other ones that you don't bring in will come into your hand with 6 mana. So if you play 4 creatures, then that is a good way of doing it. But since I'm only playing 3, then I can just choose 1 to put at the bottom of my library and put the other 2 into my hand with 6 mana. So it's a lot of good ways between his first ability, Gather the Pack, Threats Undetected, 6 there, and even Omen Path Journey. There are so many ways of getting the creatures you want on the board. So this is a pretty fun deck to play, and it works very well. All right, on to the next one. All right, so this deck is going to be what I use next time Seasons of Bloomburrow comes by. So if you remember, that was the Weekend Coalition event for the Bloomburrow set. And the objectives are to cast, I think it's 4 creatures with the power of 3 or less, I want to say. And then you have to cast rats, squirrels, frogs, and gosh, I can't remember the 4th one, but somebody will know. But this one obviously is focused on rats. And I would not recommend trying to build something for this event without having both Felix 5 boots and Hellhole rats, because this is really what makes this deck really go. So Hellhole rats, masterpiece creature rat from Wilds of Eldraine. Never quite figured out a great way to use the Hellhole rats until I got Felix. I'll explain to you how the deck works. When a rat enters the battlefield under your control, your opponent discards the last card that can be discarded from their hand. If they can't, destroy the top card of your opponent's library, then deal X damage to your opponent's planeswalker. X is half the mana cost of the last card in your opponent's graveyard, rounded up. So this card is pretty strong, and it can be both a defensive and offensive juggernaut if you know how to play with it. The main issue with this card is continuously having a way to put rats into the battlefield under your control. And that's where Felix 5 Boots comes in. Because when a creature you control deals combat damage to your opponent's planeswalker, create a copy of that card in your hand, and that card gains full mana. So as long as your opponent isn't blocking the creature that attacks with Felix 5 Boots on the board, then it will create a copy of it with full mana in your hand. So the Hellhole Rats attack, Felix creates a copy in your hand. So on the next turn, you will cast that Hellhole Rat with full mana from your hand and therefore trigger the Hellhole Rats again. And then you just keep doing that until you win. And all the while you are destroying your opponent's hand. So the other 2 rats can really be whatever you want. But I like these 2 creatures because we got Wick, the World Mind. It's a rare from Bloomburrow. And when a non-token rat enters the battlefield, create a Rat Plague token. And the Rat Plague token will trigger the Hellhole Rats. When a rat creature you control dies or loses a reinforcement, deal X damage to your opponent's planeswalker, and X is that creature's power. So we're not going to worry about that part of the creature's abilities. It's really all about having synergy with the Hellhole Rat, because you double dip, really. Hellhole Rat hits the board, it pings your opponent, and then you create a Rat Plague token, which also will ping your opponent. The Rat Plague token isn't going to really do a lot for you in terms of damage. It's just a way to trigger Hellhole Rats again. And then it also synergizes with Felix 5 Boots, because when Wick attacks, it's going to create a copy of Wick in your hand. So if you have all 3 creatures on the board, you're double dipping with Wick hitting the board and then creating another Rat Plague token. So the Hellhole Rat triggering 3 times a turn just for being able to attack is pretty great. And then we also got Relentless Rats, which is mostly here as a defensive card because it has Death Touch and Berserker. So even if it dies, it's not a big deal because it has saved me from being dealt damage by some nasty creature because it just kills it on its own. Not a great card in most decks, but it tends to work well in this deck because it just gives me an extra removal option while helping me fulfill objectives. And if you want to build out this deck, you really don't have to use all the cards in here. We talked about Demolition Field and Threats Undetected in the last one. Shieldred's Edict. It's a great cheap little removal card that can take care of a couple different things. Pyretic Rebirth is probably not a card that you're super familiar with because it is a PM2 card, but it does a little bit of double duty. Pick one of the first creature or Vanguard cards from your graveyard and then fetch that card. Gains half its mana rounded down. So in case you want to bring back one of your rat creatures once they've died, then you could do that with this card. And then it has a little bit of removal built in, or damage at least, built in. Deal X damage to each opposing creature. X is that card's base mana cost. So depending on which card you decide to take out of your graveyard, you can do a decent amount of damage with it. And then Tempt with Discovery and Coalition Victory, because those are just really good cards to have in here. So that is the explanation for this deck. Really, the key is Felix and Hellhole Rats. The rest of the deck can be whatever you have available to you. All right, let's go on to the next deck. Okay, this last deck I'm going to share with you is the deck that I use for Emrakul's Corruption for the right node, and it is a legacy deck, as you can see. Not something I usually share on this channel, but I do have a lot of them. I just don't usually think that they're that useful for most people to see. But you know, if you're a longtime vet, you might have most of these cards, if not all of them. So let's just go through them and I'll show you how the deck works. So the objectives for that event are to summon at least 2 vampires and cast less than 2 supports, or maybe it's 1 support, I can't remember. Either way, we're staying away from supports in this deck, which means that we're going to rely on conversion spells for the majority of the mana that we're going to gain. But we also have Dark Ritual, which is an amazing card. The first card in your hand gains full mana. So basically you cast this card and the next card in your hand gets filled with mana. So for 6 mana, that's pretty great. We've got a lot of vampires in here. A lot of ways to make vampires. So we got Galta and Maverin. All you got to do really is get this card on the board, and then it gives you the choice to choose to create vampire tokens. And all you got to do is hit yes, and you've hit the vampire objectives already. But if you don't, then you get to buff your creature, the greatest power among other creatures you control. So then we look at Westgate Regent. The vampire ward, pay 8 life. When this creature deals combat damage to your opponent's planeswalker, this creature gets +X +X. X is this creature's power. So it basically doubles every time it is able to hit your opponent for damage. And in conjunction with Galton Mavrin, once you have both those vampires on the board, you don't have to keep creating vampire tokens unless you want to. But if you choose to not create vampire tokens, then you're going to be able to use Westgate Regent's power to buff your first creature. So pretty good synergy there. We got Jaleva, Nephelia's Scourge, basically for fetching spells and putting them into our hand with full mana. It's a vampire, so it will help with objectives there. But really, the main reason it's in here is to give us some spells to cast for free for the next turn. And then Olamog the Defiler is basically here as a defensive option if you're kind of falling behind or you really just don't want your opponent to get a leg up on you. You cast Olamog the Defiler or get it on the board somehow, and you're just going to be able to exile cards from your opponent every turn you have. So great way of getting rid of certain nasty supports, creatures, and what have you. Speaking of removal, we also got Shieldred's Edict. If your opponent controls a Vanguard support, destroy opposing Vanguard support, otherwise destroy the last opposing creature. So it's untargeted removal, which can be very relevant. I try not to go into any battle without some sort of untargeted removal, because you never know. A lot of creatures have ward these days, like Olamog the Defiler. You need to get rid of them. You need to cast something like Shieldred's Edict or something like Coalition Victory. This card is amazing. I know it's a paid exclusive, but I do encourage anybody who is serious enough about the game with enough money to go ahead and buy this card, because it does so much for you. Spree 1 is nice defense. Your opponent discards 3 cards. Spree 3 is where it gets more interesting. Exile all opposing creatures. And then Spree 5, create a Victory Banner token. And the Victory Banner token is great with a lot of green conversion, because when you make a match 5, draw 5 cards. And with all these green conversion spells, you're probably going to do that. So it's going to be refreshing your hand as you convert gems to green, which is going to put a lot of mana into the cards that you just draw. And then, if that's not enough, at the beginning of your turn, the last 4 cards in your hand gain full mana. So just an amazing card. Really helps to make this deck really hard to beat. So we got Rishkar's Expertise, Our Promise, and Temple Discovery. 3 of my favorite conversion spells here. So this deck is top level. I'm still kind of playing around with, do I really need certain vampires? I may decide to play around a little bit with this deck. I don't know if it's completely optimized yet, but it's pretty damn close. So if you can build this deck and use it in the right node of Emrakul's Corruption, let me know how it works for you. Okay, let's get on to the grading. All right, as always, we start with maximum hit points. It's pretty straightforward. The higher the number, the better the grade you get. Just how it works. So, S plus tier, anything 135 and over, I'm just going to give the highest grade possible. So, there you have it. Mana spread. I think this one's slightly a matter of opinion here, but I think, like I said before, any planeswalker that has +5 to green is going to get some special consideration from me. And only having 1 negative is not bad either. So I'm giving him an A in that department. Ability 1. Very useful ability. Will be even better once they fix the bug that it has. But it is the one that I personally use the most, even though maybe I didn't show it as much in this showcase here. I kind of went with some of the other abilities a little bit more in a lot of my battles that I shared here, but it is still a very good ability. So I'm giving it an A. Ability 2, also a good ability. It's a little bit of a win more. You kind of already have to be in control of the match to get the most out of it, but it is pretty strong, and I think it can get you out of certain situations sometimes. So the utility of it is slightly situational, but it is strong. So giving it an A minus. Ability 3, also very good. Has the ability to get you out of some sticky situations. Maybe you didn't pack enough removal, or you just don't have it in your hand at the right time. So this can get you out of that. And then it gives you some secondary benefits when you destroy your opponent's creatures. But I tend to use this when I'm far behind. So the rest of the ability doesn't tend to give me as much benefit as just the straight up destruction of 3 random cards. So I'm going to give it an A minus. Versatility. I don't find him particularly versatile in the way that the other Golgari Planeswalkers are. I really do feel like he's a beatdown specialist. He is really good at that, and he can win with a big variety of cards, but I think he most shines when you just go straight on big creatures, putting them on the board really quickly, and just using black cards to take care of any threats you might run into. So his focus is a bit narrow, but I think he can do well with a lot of different types of decks either way. So I'm giving him a B+. Card utility. He doesn't do a lot to make your non-creature cards more effective. His abilities more just help to clear the board for your creatures to go ahead and beat face with. He does make creatures better, especially the bigger they are, the better they are. If you can find creatures that are fairly low cost, but they pack a lot of power in them, then I think his abilities can really do a lot for you in that regard. So it really depends on your play style. If green beatdown is your preferred method of getting through events, then he's great for that. But if you're more of a control player, he's definitely not as strong as some other planeswalkers, even in the same color pie. So I give him a B+ in card utility. And fun. Well, this one is going to depend on what you consider fun in this game. I personally enjoy a lot of times just creating big creatures and stomping down with them pretty quickly. I think high-speed games with a lot of power can be pretty exhilarating. So I think he can be a lot of fun. I think it's just going to depend on what you consider fun. So for me personally, I give him an A because, yeah, there are times where I really enjoy that play style. Not every time, but a majority of the time I do like what he brings to the table. And so the final grade is A-. So very solid walker. If you're not familiar with my reviews, the majority of the planeswalkers that I like and recommend actually fall into the A category. S tier I reserve for a very few. There are probably only like 6 or 7 planeswalkers in the game that I give the S tier to, and I use plenty of A walkers all the time. So don't think just because he's not an S tier walker, he's not worth getting. Anything like B and above, I feel like is worth having in your collection. I am purposely pretty tough on walkers, but you know, Webcore has been doing a pretty good job of creating good walkers. I think there's only been a couple that I would really consider duds, and some that I rated a little lower in my initial testing. I've risen a little bit higher. A- and above is an excellent walker that you should definitely consider putting into your collection. So, final thoughts on them. If you really like Garruk Unleashed and you want to bring that type of power into black, then this is definitely a planeswalker for you. To me, it's kind of like mono green with a little spice. You know, add a little black pepper to your green salad, if you will. So yeah, as always, thank you to Webcore for continuing to bring fun new planeswalkers into the game and letting me try them out for free. So all it costs is my time in creating these videos and sharing them with you all. So always appreciated, even if I don't always have the time to get to them right away. It's something that I definitely take to heart. And I also thank all of you who continuously come back and give me feedback and praise for the videos that I make. So looking forward to Duskmorn. We're in spoiler season now, so I'm hoping to get back to regularly creating content in that regard. So thank you to everyone watching, and I'll see you in the next one.